Hey guys, Bart here with TST Garage coming at you from our TST Industries headquarters in Florida. Welcome. In the studio today, behind me, we have a beautiful brand new CB650R. Honda rolled out with these bikes in 2019 and thus far they haven't changed the model yet. If you're watching this in 2030, chances are it's a different model, but thanks for watching anyway. They did outfit this bike with pretty cool LED signals, but here at TST, we like to improve even the OEM cool looking signals. So we've come up with a couple choices for you to enjoy. Choice will be yours, but I will present all the different choices to you. A couple different nuances in how they assemble onto the bike, how they connect. This is a fairly new thing for Honda. They've gone away from the traditional connectors that they've used in the front of their motorcycles to these 7-position tiny micro connectors that are sealed. This is pretty cool, but at this point it's not very prevalent on the market, so we've come up with these harness converters that universalize all of our signals for these bikes. So like I said, this 650R does use these new connectors. There are also a whole host of bikes like the 450L, the CBR 650R, and a few other models, and we feel like this is going to grow in popularity with these models, so we've rolled out with these early on for your guys' enjoyment of plug and play ability. All right, let's talk a little bit about the different options that we have here on the table in front of us. First and foremost, the BL6 signal. It's a pretty straightforward 6 LED design. The light bar is roughly 3/4 of the length of the OEM. It's a little bit slimmer, packs a really big punch of light. Once we connect these things up for you, you'll see. These are probably our most popular signals next to these Mech-GTRs. Those I will touch on later. They do have an 8mm stud with a nut and a series of locking washers. They do physically install via these TST Industries converters that cap the end of this rubber pod. You can install these signals on the bike without these components. However, you'll have unsightly, frilly looking things. I will show you what that looks like. So we highly recommend going with the mounting kit. And eventually, when you go to connect them, you use bullet-to-bullet connectors and then plug and play to the bike. Then we have our echo signals. These are CNC machined aluminum signals featuring one super high power LED firing through a very complex array of lenses that spreads the light into a large cone, even from this small package. The cool thing about these is that we have laser engraved iconography and cool shapes around that are very subtle. When you get close, you can see them. When you get farther away, they're not so obvious. Really cool touch that we thought was deserving of bikes out there and your guys' enjoyment. If you agree, we have those ready for you to enjoy. If you don't like the silver ring that they come assembled with, you could get yourself any one of these colors and change over to that simply by removing it, putting the new ring on. Anyway, it's fairly simple. Here's one with the red ring. I think red would match this bike really nicely. Kind of blends in. Really nice looking signal. Very, very bright as well, just from a smaller package. And you have the customizability of the different rings. Same to this installation method, we have the converters that you'll need to make it look right and function right. All right, these are kind of standard installation items here. I did want to show you guys these flush pod signals. These are the Mech-GTRs. They were not made for Honda vehicles. We subsequently did refit them to some Honda models like the Honda Grom, the CRF 450L, a couple different models where they fit on pretty nice. On this particular bike, the mounting of these components actually does require permanent modification to the rubber pod. This is a $20 item at the dealership. If you ever do have to go back to OEM, it'll cost you 20 bucks per side. I would say this is really not a direct bolt-on. There will be some required modifications. I will show you how to do it. Basically what we'll do is install the BL6 signals on one side, and that will be representative for the BL6 and the Echo. And then for the other side, we'll show you how to install and connect this unit, show you how it looks like, and if you're enthused about this kind of a part and are capable of making the modifications to the bike necessary to mount these, I think you really, really like these and the way they look and the way they function. We do have separate lighting elements that fit inside the pod of this signal that give you an accent ring running light in a color of your choice. We have hyper white, soft white, pink, a couple different colors that you could see on our website. So I hope you come check us out. For this particular bike, we will choose hyper white because it matches this halo around the headlight. I think that would be a nice sharp addition to the styling of this motorcycle. I think I've yapped enough. It's probably a couple of minutes of material that you guys want to fast forward through. I also enjoy wrenching more, so let's get going. We do offer these BL6 signals in either clear or smoked lens. I've chosen the clear for this particular bike because the brilliance of the clear lens kind of resembles the brilliance of this lens. We kind of want to keep that congruent. Plus, I do like the slightly higher light output from these. So let's now choose the appropriate side. We want to have the TST Industries iconography on the back upright and readable. That is one way to identify which side this lamp should be on. The other way to identify it is we have one side dips in, one side goes straight across. The one that dips in goes up top. So once we have that picked out, we're ready to go. We're going to need to remove this rubber pod off the fork. That is done using a 5mm Allen, like you see here, and a 10mm wrench. I like the box wrench approach here. There is a nut from the front and a screw that takes this Allen from the back. It is really difficult to show on video. What I'll do is remove this and then show you guys exactly how that works. All right, so now we'll slide this down the fork, rotate it forward until the back opens, and here we go, we have it out. So let me now demonstrate how this works. There is a bracket that is flat, it has a hole in it. This whole mechanism fits behind it, slides in like this. You have this shoulder bolt that goes through these two rubber pieces, goes through that flat bracket that accepts it and gets capped off with this acorn nut. So that will now give you a good understanding of how that works in there, and we can disassemble this whole thing. There is a cap here that just slides into the rubber. Just dislodge it by hand just like that. That will expose more wire. Be careful when you take it out. You don't want to pull any of these pins out. And now we'll need to remove this connector. I like to use a screwdriver to unlock it. Makes it really simple. All right, now we'll need a 3mm Allen. There's one single screw in there that fastens this rubber boot to the signal. We'll remove that. Screw comes out. Now the signal's loose. Before you pull it through and attempt to take the connector out, there is a steel piece, steel insert here that needs to be pushed inward until it falls out. This kind of jams the connector if you try to take it out. So the order of this assembly consists of this coming out first, and now this signal comes out. Now, I know these things are fairly expensive, so you may want to keep them. I do like to get all the unused components together, get them screwed together. You could potentially sell them on eBay for 70 bucks. There we go. All that comes off, and now we're left with this guy. All right, in my intro, I did tell you guys I will show you the frilly things that stick out of this pod. If you are so inclined to just install without our mounting kit, it will work. You'll just end up having this pod look like this, sort of unfinished, unrefined, and we like to leave bikes looking like a professional installed stuff on them. So this is why we came out with this mounting kit that just basically fits into this well and closes this out and it takes the guesswork out of which hole to feed your wire through. This mounting kit will actually accept any 8mm stud type signal that has this outer diameter stud equal to or less than 14mm. All right, so our finished product is going to look like this. Once it pressurizes together, it looks pretty seamless. It looks really nice. This mounting kit has the continuation of this geometry from the pod, makes it look right. Now, I did remove the fasteners from this wire before getting to this step. So now we'll need to put them back on. There's a flat washer. Typically I do one of these bullet connectors at once and then the other, otherwise they don't fit very well. Then we have a split washer that preloads the connection a little bit against the rubber and keeps our nut from unscrewing. And finally the nut. And here comes the slightly cumbersome part. Fortunately, I can't do any better than that for you guys. All these fasteners fall into this well, and now we have to start the thread by hand. I've tried to do it with pliers. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I've found that doing it by hand with a little bit of patience works the best. So now we'll turn it a little bit at a time till it bottoms out. Feel a little bit of pressure. Now you can notice that you have a little bit of resistance to turning. At this point, I'm going to use my long needle nose. If you don't have long needle nose, shorter ones will work as well. You just want to go about a quarter to half turn at a time until you get a good amount of preload on there, and then we'll do an adjust and a final tighten. All right, here's the key to success on this portion of the installation. Just know you're turning a bunch of threads in on rubber to rubber contact. There will be plenty of friction, even if you don't have it super tight. You do want to have all the rubber components preloaded, however, because that is what will keep the fasteners from spinning off and loosening up. Being that this will be connected to the bike, even if they come off, no big worry, you won't lose this component. You'll just have to re-engage the threads and retighten it. If you're worried about that scenario, or if that happens to you, you can use thread lock on these threads, but I feel like it's unnecessary. I've done a number of these installations like this on different bikes, and they don't really loosen. Now you don't want to go so tight that you end up tearing the stud out of the overmolded rubber. You just need enough friction here for resistance to rotation. All right, so now let's get this on here and get it in position. You need to make sure that these tabs collectively go behind that flat bracket. So that's why I turn it forward, slide it up, and then back into position. Now, you need to make sure that the circuit board, and thereby the light output, is actually parallel with the ground. Right now we're pointing up. You want to turn this thing down a little bit. If you've tightened it too much, it won't rotate. If you've tightened it just enough, with just a little bit of force, it will rotate, but then still resist natural rotation by itself. I think I have a really good angle here. Actually, I may have over-rotated it. Let's try this. That looks good to me. All right. So now I know that I'm tight enough on the fastener. This is all good. Final inspection, there's no crazy gaps going on. We can go ahead and plug in our harness converter that will make this plug and play. Black to black, yellow to yellow. Now these BL6 signals are a single circuit signal. So are the echoes. They operate in signaling mode, but there is no running light mode on board these lamps. So this blue wire is the running light wire should you have signals that do have a running light, like our Mech-GTRs that I will demonstrate later. For this particular setup, we will have to cap this off. If the insulating cap slides off and this touches ground, it'll blow a fuse. You don't want that. That fuse will take out probably headlight or taillight or something else with it. So what we're gonna do is grab some electrical tape and we'll make sure that this sleeve is on all of the metal parts that are at the end of this connection. Make sure the terminal is fully covered. I like to fold it over and keep it in place with this electrical tape. Now, I also like to do this over these connectors because there is a chance that this may slide off during vibration in use. So I am going to also fix these guys in place, making sure that there's no metal protruding from the insulators. I just go over the entire connection, do sort of this lazy wrap first that accomplishes locking things in place, and then I go back over with a nice tight wrap. Now we have this really nice connection that is insulated, has a sealed connector on the terminating side. Really, really nice. So we've actually added quite a bit of wire bulk to this whole setup. For now, let's just try to jam as much of this wire length here under the cap that we took out of here, kind of like the OEM setup had. This will reduce the amount that we have to manage later. Now you don't want to overfill this cavity here because then this cap won't want to fit in there. So just use your judgment. It does have a split for where the wire is supposed to be coming out. Once you get that in there, this is pretty much self-contained, ready to go back on the bike. Kind of showed you that before. Once again, get it around the fork leg, up, turn it forward. Make sure that both of those ears that have a hole through them go around the back of that bracket using that shoulder screw that came out. We'll get that slid through and then capped off with the acorn nut from the other side. Now, unless you have tiny little fingers, this is kind of cumbersome to get in there, so I'm going to employ my needle nose pliers and hold this at an angle like this. This helps me get my nut in place. After I engage the threads, I'm going to want to make sure that I'm not tightening this in a lowered position. As you can see here, it can droop, and once we tighten it, it may come back up, but why strain the material? Let's bring it all the way back up and then bottom out our fasteners. That is a shoulder bolt on there. It will only tighten until that shoulder bottoms out against the bracket that we're mounting against. So there's no such worry as maybe squishing the rubber pod. So we can just take it to full tightness, bottom it out. All right, that's good to go. Now I'm going to connect it and test it. I can predict the result because I've done this a number of times on this bike. We will not have signal light right now because we have not changed the flasher relay from OEM to LED just yet. If you have the OEM setup on the rear of this bike, you will still have the OEM signals, and this will flash, but it will hyper flash. I can demonstrate on the other side of the bike. As you can see, it's flashing really fast. The reason for that is we have mounted one of our prototypes of an integrated taillight on this bike. The taillight itself has the signals in the capsule. This bike expects more current to be drawn from the signaling system. So in order to alert you that something is not the way it was designed, it'll hyper flash. So let's revisit really quickly. With one set of signals changed on this bike, it'll hyper flash. With two sets of signals changed, even though these are connected and the rear taillight's connected, they will not flash. this will need the installation of one of our flasher relays. We have the Gen 2 flasher relay that fits directly, plug and play, into the OEM socket here. It's a replacement part. We will run a separate video showing you how to install that part. Just know that if you do replace front and rear, you will have to do something about your flash rate. Some people like to wire in resistors. We don't like to do that. We do the flasher relay. See that video on our website or on our YouTube channel. For now, I'm just gonna go ahead and finish this off. So we do have this nice bracket here that is meant for capturing the routing of the clutch cable. We do have the ability to zip tie to the back of it. I will just need to get this bunched up together and get it behind there and zip tie it there. I do have some colored wire protruding, and I also have this green plug. So I think what I'm going to do is use electrical tape to obscure that so it's not in view. And everything's black, just like the rest of the components back in there. I think the trick to making this look right is to not make this tape look sloppy. So we want to make sure to have nice tight windings. And that looks really nice. I'm going to use scissors to cut off the excess. All right, let's grab a zip tie. All right, for a final test, what we'll do is plug in the OEM signals into the rear of this bike so that you guys can actually witness the signaling. All right, here we go. As you can see, they're nice and bright, pretty large, look really, really proper on this bike. They are hyper flashing a little bit, but if you're okay with that, it will not harm the electronic system on this bike. If you're not flashing, then you've probably changed more than one of the signaling circuits, and the result will be that it's not flashing. For the installation on the other side, you basically do the same exact steps, just on that side of the bike with the right side lamp. If you happen to choose the echo signals, the installation is exactly the same as what I just showed you, just with these signals. So, for now, I'm going to be done with this since it's exactly the same on the other side. What I'll show you using the other side is the permanent modification that needs to be made to install our Mech-GTR signals. We'll take you through those steps in just a moment. Now, this will be kind of a controversial way to mount signals to a bike. Please only embark on this journey if you're comfortable making the modification that I'm about to show you. The reason why I'm willing to do this on video for you guys and willing to sell these for this bike is because look how awesome these are going to match all the design language on this motorcycle. I think it really deserves to have these signals on there. So let's give it a try and let's get going. I'm going to have to slice off a part of this rubber that is actually filled in to open up the void left behind. For that, we'll have to rip down all of those components the way we showed you on the other side of the bike. I'm just going to speed through that real quick because it's pretty much a repetition of what we did already on the left side. All right, as you can see, this is filled in. On the back side, it's a void. It does fit the geometry of this flush pod pretty nicely. So what we'll need to do is slice off just the part that is filled in. Grab a knife and I'll give that a try. All right, our traditional way of mounting these Mech-GTR signals is our ratcheting ring that fits over these ratchets. Obviously, for the purpose of this installation, we can't use it. If your kit came with these, please do not use them, set them aside. We also have some O-rings. We may or may not be able to use them here in this installation. We'll see in a moment. Let's talk about cutting. I think I'm going to start by cutting on the inboard side of this rib feature and try to maintain a nice, clean, straight cut. I'll need a very sharp razor for that. I'm going to take my time, make sure I don't apply too much pressure, because that usually results in just poor cuts. That looks pretty decent here. I do have a couple frillies sticking off. Cutting plier usually is pretty good about removing those. And if need be, this can also be sanded a little bit. I'm pretty happy with that. Now let's feed the wires through and see what this thing looks like after it's inserted. Pretty cool, eh? Especially knowing that this will light up in that color that we've chosen. For us, it's going to be our hyper white. Now that fits pretty snug in there. You could potentially just insert it and rely on the friction, but I like to get that fixed in place with a bonding agent. I'll show you more of that in just a moment. Let's talk about these guys. This is the surround light insert. It arrives to you this way. The wire needs to be routed through this channel, just like that, to the bottom. The bottom is indicated by TST IND and our sprocket logo. And then you also get this wire in that channel. Try to capture a little bit of that black sheathing. And then this just slides in. It has little catch tabs that will go into these tiny little windows and make that secure. All right, so now we need to plug that in and get that fed back through. And I'm gonna insert this partially in here. Now we're going to use a bonding agent to bond the plastic to the rubber. We don't want a very permanent bond in case there's a crash in the future and you want to replace this. You don't want to use a chemical agent that will solidify it. But shoe glue and Loctite vinyl fabric and plastic adhesive are really good choices for something that is pretty good but not permanent. This will keep plastic adhered to the rubber and won't permit vibrations to remove your signal, but in case you break this at some point and want to replace it, you'll be able to muscle it out, clean it off, and redo it. So being that my Loctite agent is pretty much out, I'm gonna use some shoe glue. These things are available in Lowe's, Home Depot, and I'm sure for you folks overseas, you have similar things available to you. We're just gonna do a little bit around, especially on the ratcheting pieces. And this stuff off gases pretty quickly, so we wanna fit it together fairly quickly as well. I'm gonna go in and out a little bit, make sure it distributes in there. If there is any excess that comes off, I'm gonna let it cure a little bit, and then I'm gonna clean it off. That rubber O-ring that I mentioned before will go over this whole assembly here. If you remember, we did have ratcheting teeth on the body of the signal. This O-ring in this groove will keep a little bit more pressure between this rubber and those ratchets. It'll help prevent vibratory removal during road use. It's looking pretty sweet. I can't wait to show you guys what this thing looks like. Now I'm gonna put it on the fork just for safekeeping here while I work on the cap. I do like to reuse these caps, otherwise we have a gaping hole there. But now with the body of the signal sticking in to the pod, we have interference. So we'll need to trim away a little bit of this cap here, the straight section after the flange. The flange actually does the locking between the plastic and the rubber here. We want to keep that on. So just slice off a little bit of this. Okay, I've cut this back to be flush with our flange feature. Now I'm going to attempt to hide this connector and a little bit of this wire in here while passing our wire that is supposed to be going to the exterior through this channel and this channel. Okay, now that's looking good. It did not push our signal out. There's no exposure of any components except for the black wire here. So we are pretty good. I think what I'll do is actually mount this back to the bike now, and that'll make it simpler on me. All right, we are physically mounted here. Now we need to make our electrical connection. As you notice here, we have blue, red, and black, blue, yellow, and black. That's a mismatch. There's a good reason why the color coding of these wires is the way it is. Won't get into it in this video. This was an engineering choice back a couple of years ago. So just follow these steps and you'll be good to go. We'll go blue to blue. Nice and simple. And then we're going to go red to black, which is a little bit counterintuitive, but just bear with me. And then yellow to black. So let's go over that again. Blue to blue, yellow from our harness converter to black on our signal, and then black from our harness converter to our red on the signal. Should be pretty simple. All of the wires are taken up. What I'm going to do is plug it in real quick, make sure I have the functions going before I use our electrical tape to close this all off. Before I power it up, I have to make sure that none of these connections have the ability to touch and short. All right, here we go. We have running light and we have a little bit of signal. Again, to reiterate, we have an integrated taillight on the back. If you replace more than one lamp on these bikes, they go into such a high frequency hyper flash that they're very dim, or on some models like this one, they don't even show up. All right, let's get our insulating caps locked down in place. Cap off any of this wire that is still exposed so that it's only black wire that we're seeing, or black components we're seeing. That matches the interior of this bike behind the headlights, so I think that'll make for the best look. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, what do we do with the excess wire? Same thing we did on the other side. We have a few less wires to tie off to. There is a brake line here going to your ABS. We probably don't want to mess with that. There is one larger loom here we'll just tie off to that. Just make sure that you leave a little bit of slack for any kind of movement that needs to take place. I also don't like these twisted. So I'm going to straighten them out like that. That looks pretty nice there. Oh, all right. Let me grab some zip ties. You can actually opt to do the electrical tape wind around this as well. But on this particular side, it looks like we have more of a hiding place here behind this loom. So I'm just going to make use of that. That looks pretty good. At this point, I'm just going to take this through the range of motion here, make sure there's no tension being exerted on any of these wires. And then finally, get my one zip tie in place to hold these guys. All right, guys, we've gone ahead and installed our Gen 2 flasher relay on this bike. It'd be silly to install the signals and not let you experience exactly how they look when they're flashing properly. So let's go ahead and take a look. This is the BL6 signal. As you can see, it's flashing at the correct rate. It's really, really bright, good to go. Our Mech-GTR, equally as bright, awesome look, just a slightly different styling to it. Whichever one you choose, just know we've got you covered. If you like what you see here, perhaps you want to check out some more products for your bike, check out tstindustries.com. Got you covered. Hope to see you there. Ride safe.